The White House announced today that President Trump is given a one-month tariff exemption for automakers after he spoke with the heads of General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. Joining us now to discuss is Patrick Anderson, Anderson Economic Group CEO and Principal. Patrick, it is good to see you. Fast-moving headlines, Patrick. Let's start with that one right there. President Trump did announce this one-month tariff exemption for automakers. Patrick, your reaction to that news?
This underlines, again, just how important the auto industry is to both the United States and Canada, and also the extreme sensitivity and the appropriate sensitivity of the American president to potential job losses, income losses, and very negative consumer reaction to tariffs, particularly in heartland states like Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Texas, as well as provinces like Ontario.
I guess I'm wondering where that sensitivity was in the first place, Patrick, and why there wasn't just an exemption for autos from the jump here. But I guess that's politics, I suppose. But does it also show that that the industry still does have some some cards to play, if you will, does have some power in Washington, and when it comes to the president?
Either the industry has power, or what I would say more clearly is the president and his team are pretty good at politics, and they're looking at estimates such as from Anderson Economic Group of $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 a car from a tariff. And they have to realize that whatever rhetoric and negotiating position aside they want to pursue, the fact is that American consumers are not going to be happy about paying $5,000 more for a car, and some of them will not buy those cars, and that will mean job losses. And when the rubber meets the road, literally and figuratively, no elected official wants to be responsible for throwing automakers and small businesses that work in the auto industry out of work.
So, Patrick, if I'm the CEO of an automaker and I've got this reprieve, I have a one-month reprieve, what are some of the choices I can make here? What's possible? I mean, you look at production of Mexico and Canada. Are they thinking about bringing more of that back to the U.S.? How much can be brought back to the U.S., Patrick? And what would even be the timetable of that?
The United States has been extraordinarily successful, along with Canada in particular, at integrating manufacturing across the U.S.-Canadian border, and more recently, some portion of it across into northern Mexico. That's why we produce Hondas, Toyotas, Kias, Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, and GM, and Ford, and Stellantis vehicles all here. So we've been successful at doing that. We build and export in very large numbers here. And in 1 month, you're not going to move factories across a border. So I'm glad that this reprieve has been offered again now with the on-again, off-again threat of tariffs for at least for autos. But the fact is that whatever the underlying issues are about the border, and the president has legitimate issues he's articulated about control of the border, illegal immigration, drugs, etc., they're not going to be resolved by opening or closing any factories within the next month.
Patrick, it's my understanding that this latest reprieve only affects finished vehicles, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm wondering if you've done any cost analysis on still what the tariffs on some of the parts coming into the U.S., what effect that will have on prices. And then not only that, but next week, scheduled to go into effect are tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the U.S., which obviously adds to costs of cars that are even made here. So what kind of effect could we still have from all of that?
It's very difficult to figure out how you're going to tariff just some parts of a car, but not another. You have parts of vehicles and assemblies of those parts and whole vehicles crossing the U.S.-Canadian border 2 and 3 times. If you count individual parts, you could have as much as 8 times. So our cost estimates here are assuming there's some effort to not double count this. But once you start tariffing, you're going to end up inevitably double counting some portion of the value added.
Even before all this tough tariff talk, Patrick, affordability was already an issue in the auto industry, was it not?
It absolutely was. And, I've been looking at the auto industry for some time, and there's a pretty strong relationship between how much people earn and how much they're willing to pay for a car, particularly a new car. And with new vehicle prices at above $45,000, in many cases $50,000, that's a big affordability difficulty for a lot of American consumers, and they're already resisting buying new cars. In fact, we had a significant drop in the last couple of months in purchases of new vehicles even before the tariffs were suddenly imposed and then taken off. So that's a serious issue. And that's even before we get to electric vehicles, which are substantially more expensive, and you see great consumer resistance to buying more electric vehicles. So it's a serious problem. And again, if you're having trouble selling cars at $45,000, if you add $6,000 to that as a government tariff, you're going to have real trouble selling cars.
Patrick, big, complicated story and issue. Thank you for helping us think through it. Appreciate it.
All right. Good to see you both.